Don't settle for bad socks. Get comfort and grip at an affordable price with Pure Grip Socks Pro. Choose from 18 different colors at puregripsocks.com.
A trend that Nike more or less started back in 2014 is offering two different versions of their top-end model, a low cut and a mid-cut. And inside this box, I have their latest mid-cut offering that, compared to the low, might look quite a bit different, but in reality, it's actually almost exactly the same, sort of. There are differences, but they just don't matter as much as you'd think. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Nike Phantom GX Elite DF, the mid-cut replacement for the Phantom GT2, and in comparison to the low-cut model, a football boot that appears to be quite a bit different in that it features, of course, a mid-cut design, but also introduces a lace cover, which we could go a few years further back into the Nike Phantom series. It's actually very reminiscent of the Phantom Vision that, of course, has also been discontinued. And just like every other mid-cut variation from Nike, these do come at a premium, keeping in mind that this is a Soft Ground Pro model, which retails for $285. A normal FG1 would run you $275, where the low-cut FG equivalent is only going to cost $250. And if you saw my review of the Phantom GX Elite Lows, then you know that I think they're fantastic football boots, a huge improvement over the Phantom GT2 that they replaced, which is why in today's video, I want to talk about exactly what the differences are and whether or not I think these are any better or worse when compared to the slightly less expensive low-cut variation. If you're having a hard time deciding which one you want, this video should help you out. So if you're interested in learning more, including how they fit and feel on feet, please stick around, watch the entire review. And if you're interested in a pair for yourself, you can pick them up below their normal retail price by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes by checking out the first link down below. And really quickly, if you guys enjoy these brutally honest reviews, perhaps want to see reviews of the takedown models in the new Phantom GX lineup, drop a like on the video and make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2023. So to get right to the point, if you're comparing the low cut and the mid cut version of the Phantom GX Elite, there are three key differences between the two, one of which being, of course, the mid cut collar that's been added to the DF model, the second of which is, of course, the lace cover that, again, you only get on the DF model. And the third thing being something that you can't actually see, and that's the way that these two boots lace up. Where on the low-cut model, it's pretty straightforward because you can see everything. It's an elasticated Flyknit material through the middle of the foot, a dual lace hole setup for this one-piece upper construction, and I guess the unique element of the Phantom GX being this kind of hooded area of the upper that actually covers up the last two lacing positions closer to the toe box and forefoot area of the football boot. This is something that you would think is exclusive to the low-cut model, but is actually the exact same construction that you're going to find on the DF. With the main difference being that the DF model still features that same hooded design, but instead of the hood ending, it just extends into this elasticated Flyknit material acting as a lace cover. Pretty well the identical design to what was found years ago on the Phantom Vision. They're even still calling it ghost laces, and that's something that needs to be made clear here on the DF model. It's not a laceless football boot. The laces are just covered up by a lace cover. And then if we take a look underneath the lace cover, you'll notice that you still have a lacing system that runs pretty much the same length, but instead of using a dual lace hole setup, it utilizes basically these nylon bands, again, very similar to that of the Phantom Vision, to basically anchor the laces in place. And I think the main reason why they've done that is in the event that you needed to replace these laces, which would be very difficult to do given the limited space in there, it would be possible, whereas if it were a dual lace hole setup, it'd be pretty much impossible to do. But that's the only difference, the way that the laces are connected to the football boot. Other than that, the construction is identical. Yes, they could have probably gone and used the quad fit system from the Phantom Vision on this football boot, but the construction, the layered materials, the thickness of the upper, everything is identical. The main difference here is the fact that you just can't see the laces because it's covered up by some extra Flyknit, which truthfully does absolutely nothing. The grip knit doesn't continue across the lace cover. This is far more slippery than what you're going to find on the grip knit area highlighted in blue on this particular colorway. And there's an argument to be made that because of these nylon lace loops that you have as connection points, there's actually more bulk across the top of your foot along with that lace cover than what you'd find with the low cut models. And then there's the DF collar, which is very much a Superfly Vapor type situation, where if you look at the low cut model, it just has basically that same elasticated knit material around the edges. It just doesn't extend very high, where on the DF model, they've extended it into a collar that kind of has these off-centered pull tabs, one that's kind of on the medial side and then the back one on the lateral side. I think it's a little bit strange looking in person. It doesn't really come through in pictures. Maybe we'll get a better idea of what it looks like in this video. I just feel like it almost looks like it's twisted and not centered properly, but that is the intended design. Again, no difference in terms of support. No ankle support is going to be provided by a thin sock-like material. It's pretty well the same type of elasticated Flyknit you're going to find on any other mid-cut football boot. Definitely a lot less flimsy than what used to be found on the Phantom Vision, for those that are curious. And in general, the only difference I find that it makes is that it makes these boots much more difficult to put on when compared to the low-cut model. And then while we're at the rear of the football boot, the heel construction is identical. You have an internal plastic heel counter. The liner is this really soft microfiber material and has a nice amount of padding in there. No difference in shape compared to the low-cut model from what I can tell at all. And then the insole, fully removable. I'll give you guys a quick look at that. It features this really standard mesh liner on the surface, and it's made from a single layer of this yellow foam with this really cool fingerprint design, but ultimately it's a pretty straightforward and simple insole. Beyond the low-cut, mid-cut thing, the reason to buy the Phantom GX is the grip knit upper, which of course is highlighted here in blue on this Blast Pack colorway, and it really does provide this kind of silicone grippiness on the surface without feeling stiff or rigid in any way. It does have that soft sock-like feel that I think people expect from a knitted pair of football boots, but that grip and that texture is actually incorporated into the yarn itself. So I think they've really struck this nice balance of flexibility, structure, and overall comfort with additional grip on the ball that actually does make a difference. The only thing that's going to provide more grip than these is going to be something like a Predator Edge, which is just covered in rubber elements. But from a feel perspective to the upper, this I think is significantly better, way more comfortable on your foot, and way better feedback on the ball. And of course, because there aren't tall rubber elements on the surface, you feel much more connected. There's better feel for the ball in general. And again, it just feels like a very well-rounded football boot. It also covers the majority of the upper, other than the area across the top of the foot, where I really feel like it was a bit of a missed opportunity to not incorporate some amount of grip knit on the lace cover. I think that would have justified the DF model a little bit more for me, other than just kind of looking cool, because I can't deny that I do think the mid-cut version does look pretty cool, even in comparison to the low-cut one, which I also think looks really good. Nonetheless, it is a top performer in today's football boot market, where I think if you're looking for something with additional grip, not only is it a gigantic improvement over the Phantom GT and GT2, which just had a little bit of minor texturing that ultimately did very little, this is something that gives you that grip without feeling overly sticky, and of course, without feeling overly stiff or bulky. I know we've seen the design philosophy of the Nike Phantom series change so much from one model to the next, but I genuinely believe that grip knit is something that we're going to see stick around for quite a few years. As for the sole plate and stud pattern, it too is an all-new design compared to the Phantom GT2 that it replaces. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, this is the Soft Ground Pro variation. If you compare it to the FG model, you'll notice that the studs are a little bit different, and even some of the intricacies of the upper have been changed, but that is by design because Nike Soft Ground Pro sole plates do feature anti-clog technology. So instead of having all those little lines for dirt to get caught in, they've left the upper kind of as smooth as possible, but still maintain the main design elements of the FG sole plate, which is really, really flexible and has that little bit of a spring back effect. It's, to me, again, a huge improvement over what was found on the Phantom GT2, and it's nice to see that they're providing new tooling even on the soft ground variation. So this anti-clog system, for those that don't know, is a surface finish that is slippery when wet, which means that dirt basically won't stick to it. However, the only way that this works is pending that the surface of that sole plate doesn't get overly scratched up. So you want to use this exclusively on soft, natural grass playing surfaces that have some wetness to it, which is typically going to be the case with any type of soft ground. It's the reason why it's soft in the first place, and is one of those technologies that legitimately works extremely well. Given that the sole plate is in clean and kind of smooth condition, mud will not stick to the bottom, which does prove to be a legitimate performance advantage. If the bottom of your foot is covered in mud, not only is that heavier for you when running, traction will be compromised. So having that anti-clog technology, I think, is a real benefit if you need a pair of soft ground boots, but keep in mind it is exclusive to the soft ground model. Something that's also new for the Phantom GX, particularly in the soft ground variation, is the same innovation we saw with the Mercurial soft ground options, in that you can see the black tip studs, 4 in the forefoot, 2 in the heel, are metal, but the rest of the stud is plastic, and they're no longer screw-in studs, which means they're not removable and you can't replace them. The reason for this is arguably because Nike wants you to wear out the studs and have to buy new football boots, or they have actually decreased the weight of a soft ground pair of football boots quite significantly by making the metal studs fixed ones and eliminating a lot of the metal, which of course is just going to be heavier than super lightweight plastic. You have, of course, the molded firm ground studs kind of in between all the metal ones to give you a little bit more of a normal firm ground football boot feel underfoot. And in general, from a traction standpoint, I really don't think there's much that separates one soft ground stud pattern from the next. They're the proper length. They provide really good bite pending that the ground is soft. And again, with that anti-clog technology in the sole plate, something that is exclusive to Nike, this is pretty much as good as it gets as far as soft ground traction is concerned. Which brings us to the weight, where I'm sure you'd love to know what the weight difference is between the low cut and the mid cut model. I'd love to make that comparison for you. However, given that these are soft ground and my other pair is firm ground, I don't think it's really fair to do so, just because soft ground boots are always a little bit heavier because of the metal studs. Nonetheless, I think it's safe to assume that given the similarities in construction and the DF model simply just utilizing more material on the upper as that main difference, the DF model is going to weigh a little bit more. How much more? We'll have to wait and see in a future video. Nonetheless, in a size 9.5 US, the Soft Ground Pro DF model of the Phantom GX weighs in at 8.65 ounces, the equivalent of 245 grams, which, given that this is a soft ground pair of football boots and doesn't even fall into the speed category, is actually remarkably lightweight. And if you're looking for a pair of light soft ground boots in general, Nike is pretty much making some of the lightest ones currently available. And again, soft ground boots are heavier than firm ground ones, so expect this very same boot with an FG sole plate and stud pattern to weigh about a full ounce less. So here they are on feet, where honestly, after seeing how these use nylon lace loops rather than a dual lace hole setup like the low cut version, I did half expect them to at least fit or feel a little bit different through the midfoot, forefoot area of the upper, but in all honesty, they really don't feel any different at all. The shape is identical, the fit is identical. Of course, you do feel the collar around the lower part of your ankle Achilles area, which is kind of just a mid-cut football boot characteristic. If you like that feel, go for the mid-cut version. If you don't, that's why they make the lows. But overall, there really isn't much that separates the DF and the low-cut version of this football boot, if anything, and I didn't really remember this being a thing with the Phantom Vision, but you can see it makes for just more bulk and material across the top of your foot if you do compare it to the low-cut version. I didn't really find that to be a noticeable difference on the ball, but you can see visually there is definitely more bulk with the mid-cut version, and of course the additional material that comes along with the nylon lace loops and the lace cover in general. So something to be aware of, but at the end of the day, I feel like the distinction between the low and the mid this time around, just like it has been for basically as long as I can remember with Nike's low-cut and mid-cut models, you should basically just pick based on whichever one that you like the look of, and if you can justify the extra $25 for the DF model, I really don't see why you wouldn't want to go for them. What I also like about this pair in particular, being that it is soft ground, is that the soft ground sole plate feels very much like the FG model, something that a lot of brands just don't get right. Typically the soft ground one will have a little bit of a different feel. Not the case with these. From a width perspective, they're not that different from the Phantom GT2 that they replace, although I definitely think the shaping is a little bit better with the laces being a little more central this time around. So overall, they're more snug through the midfoot and forefoot area, but definitely still have a little bit of a tapered toe box. So if you have super wide feet, probably not a great option. And in general, I think the low-cut model, because it's just easier to put on, would be the better option for a slightly wider foot type. But for most people, the width should work on Phantom GX for you. And then as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So if you are looking to get a pair for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size. in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, the Nike Phantom GX Elite DF is still, just like the low-cut model, an excellent pair of football boots. However, it is a more complicated pair of football boots with the addition of the lace cover, the more intricate nylon lacing system that it has, and of course the mid-cut collar, all of which, in my opinion, benefit the performance in no way whatsoever, and if anything, arguably make the upper feel that little bit more bulky on your feet, even if it is just a subtle difference. So in my opinion, unless you just absolutely love the look of the DF model, which I don't blame you for, this is a very cool looking football boot, arguably better looking than the low-cut version when it comes down to objective performance and really just the experience of playing in the football boots and certainly putting them on. It's much easier to get on the low-cut model, and for that reason alone, I would pick the lows over the mids, but again, there is absolutely no bad choice here.